G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, review of the week time. So, good few fights happened this weekend. Some happened in the States last night. I did see them, just didn't do any post fights today. But gotta talk about them first before we talk about the Matchroom card that happened on last night. Oh, pick and choose. Who would we talk about? Jaron Ennis Boots or Jose Zepeda? Both first round knockouts, both explosive, both were good fights. We'll start with Boots Ennis. You know, Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis are two of the most impressive welterweight, I think it's fair to say we'll call them contenders now, I've seen come across in many, many years. Jaron Ennis Boots especially. The sheer athleticism he has, the punching power, the speed, the way he's able to go from southpaw to orthodox seamlessly and carry power in both hands. When you watch him, it can almost be mesmerising sometimes to watch him. Just his shot selection, his speed, his athleticism, everything about him. Now, in his fight against Thomas Delorme last night, he got a first round knockout. Now, I did pick him, in my prediction league to win by knockout. I thought this fight would go a little bit longer than the first round because I just thought Delorme, he's never had an iron jaw, and I think the Showtime commentator said that after the first knockdown, that was the 9th time he'd been down in his career. So he'd been down in a few fights, it's fair to say. But I thought that because he's a veteran now at this stage, he might be able to make it fiddly, just use some of the things he's learned over the years, just to make it fiddly for Boots Ennis. We didn't do that. And the punching power of Boots Ennis just told instantly. He was able to drop Delorme, in the first round. Looked like the writing was on the wall then and there. Although saying that, Boots Ennis went in for the kill. He left himself a bit exposed, and he ended up actually getting countered. I think it was a left hook that Delorme threw, and landed bang on Boots Ennis' chin. Now, had that have been say he'd been in there with, or let's just say a Virgil Ortiz. Let's say he'd been in there with an Errol Spence, someone like that. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be leaving your chin out in the air and being very reckless and walking onto shots like that against the top guys. Didn't matter in the end. It was I think it was a straight right hand. It was a right hand anyway, because it was this morning when I seen it. But anyway, Delorme went down. I think you could tell the punching power was really, obviously it was affecting Delorme, but you could tell that it was probably taking him by surprise. It almost looked like, with the punching power of Jaron Ennis. So he moves on. Lou DiBella's been saying he's ready for Spence and Crawford now. I would pull back on that personally. I think that Boots Ennis is extremely talented. One of the most athletic welterweights I've seen in a while. He's very impressive. For me, he's number one in terms of people I think, or I believe, in terms of 147, who will be a major player for years to come. Boots Ennis got to be number one. But I just think that going from a Thomas Delorme into a Terence Crawford, an Errol Spence, that might be a little bit too soon for him. I'd like to see him potentially, if Keith Thurman ever comes back. Now, I can't see Keith Thurman taking that fight, to be honest with you, whether he comes back or not, because what does he gain realistically from beating Boots Ennis? And Ennis has a lot to gain from it, so it makes sense for him. I would say maybe look at a Danny Garcia. That'd be very interesting. I mean, Danny Garcia has always shown a very good chin. In fact, he's always shown an excellent chin. If Boots Ennis could hurt, drop, or potentially stop Danny Garcia, it'd be a major statement, because Danny Garcia, his losses have all come against champions in title fights. He has first loss against Thurman, it was a very close fight. Second loss against Sean Porter for the vacant title, and that was a very close fight. I thought Sean Porter won the fight, but a lot of people felt Danny Garcia did enough to get the nod. And then obviously he fought Errol Spence right about this time last year, wasn't there? Or maybe it was December last year. But anyway, he fought Errol Spence in a world title fight. So all his losses have come in world title fights. Him against Boots Ennis, that'd be an interesting fight. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Danny Garcia has good power in the left hook. He is a counter puncher, but he's never, it's certainly not at 147. I don't think he's a devastating puncher, certainly not at 147. I think he's got good power there, he's accurate, with the left hook, But that being interesting, if I was in Boots Ennis' team, I'd be saying, look, if we're fighting Danny Garcia, I'd love to see that fight, by the way. Just be a bit more cautious. A left hook from him is going to be different than catching a left hook from Thomas Delorme. Make no mistake about that. But I'd like to see that. You know, if they're looking at going down the world title route, when you're Dennis Ugas, I think he's got a mandatory coming up. But once that's free, you'd expect. I forget the guy's name, but I know he's nothing special. So we have that with your Dennis Ugas. In terms of Jose Zepeda, the guy he fought, I thought Zepeda in his last fight looked very flat. Didn't look good at all, and I thought that was a result of the fight he had with Baranchek, because that was an up and down war, and Baranchek in his last fight looked like that had taken a lot out of him. I thought the same for Zepeda, but in this fight he was able to come in, get a first round knockout. Vargas was the opponent, 23 years old. Too much too soon. He got countered with a lovely, beautiful straight left hand from Jose Zepeda. Yeah, he went face down, and I'm surprised the referee didn't call it then and there, because Vargas tried to get up after the knockdown, and he fell straight back down. Now, he wasn't fully to his feet. It wasn't like he was standing up, like Zab Judah style and went back down. He was kind of getting up and then fell back down again. Normally, and probably if that fight had been in the UK, they would have waved it off then and there. The referee gave him another shot, but he was backed up in the corner by Zepeda, was ended up stopped. And some of them shots that were going in were heavy shots of the referee. That was a good stoppage. At the end of the day, when someone goes down face first, very, very seldom they see the end of the round, or in fact they even get a chance, to be honest with you. Once they go down face first, it's pretty much taking everything out of them, and that's exactly what Jose Zepeda did. Jose Zepeda, I believe, he's certainly number 1 ranked by WBC. I don't know if he's mandatory, but if he is, Josh Taylor has to get rid of Jack Cattrall, and if he does plan on sticking around at 140 for maybe another fight, Jose Zepeda, I'm in. That's a top rank fight. They're both with top rank. That's a great fight. Zepeda, you would say, would be the last kind of name, to an extent, the big kind of probably top 5 140 pounder Josh Taylor hasn't fought yet. So if you think about it, if Josh Taylor does fight Zepeda next year, we'll just say he decides to maybe stick around at 140 a little bit longer, his resume will consist of, in the last few years, of Ivan Baranchek, Regis Prograis, Jose Ramirez, and Jose Zepeda. It's pretty damn impressive. Again, people like to draw comparisons to Taylor's reign. Now, that's to say he will fight him. I don't know, he might not. He might just go up from 147 after his next fight. But the draw comparisons, the 140 division now that Josh Taylor's undisputed champion, it's not even close. It's way stronger than it was when Terence Crawford was champion at 140 pounds. I mean, Terence Crawford beat guys like Julius Ndongo, Felix Diaz. Felix Diaz was an alright fighter. Who else did he fight? Victor Postal actually was actually a good fighter back then, but Postal's still quite good today. But I'm telling you now, the fighters I named, Ramirez, Zepeda, Prograis, they'd all beat Julius Ndongo. They'd probably all beat Felix Diaz. So kudos to Josh Taylor for cleaning out the division almost. We'll say we clean out the division if he gets Zepeda. I still like to see that fight. I still think Zepeda is the last kind of name that we'd see Josh Taylor fight. But if he doesn't, hey, look, he's still undisputed champion. Now we move on to the Matchroom card. Before I get on that, there was another fight on that PBC card, Jamal James and that Russian guy, but I didn't get a chance. I never even seen it, so I can't talk about that. I actually picked Jamal James to win that fight, so I was surprised he didn't, and I was surprised he got stopped as well. But I hadn't seen the fight in a nutshell, so I'm not going to talk about that, just because I didn't see enough of it. I saw barely any clips of it, and I'm not really going to talk too much about it because I just didn't see enough. So we'll talk about the Matchroom card that went on last night. It was it was quite a weak card, as many of us, we were talking about that being a weak card prior to Dillian Whyte pulling out of the fight with Otto Wallin. I think there was 4,000 people altogether in the O2. I really do think, look, I don't know, was it a viable option to do this, or if maybe there was something else on, but I really do think Eddie Hearn missed a trick when he didn't move this to the copper box. I really do. It looked pretty poor. You know, the O2 arena is such a big arena. The top of it was all blackened. You know, there was still loads of empty seats. And when Johnny Fisher fought, who I'll touch on now in a wee bit, it looked noticeable that people left. You know, he sold well over 1,500 tickets. And I heard Ade say that in many ways, that, or was it Ade or Hatman, was one of the two, who said in many ways that kind of saved the show. And I think it did. I really do think it did save the show. I mean, Johnny Fisher, who we'll talk about, I may as well start with him. Johnny Fisher fought that Spanish guy. They need to move him slow. You know, he's very powerful. You can see that. He just looks powerful. You know, but he is a bit crude. They do still need to take their time with him. I think that, you know, he has that big fan base, and they'll come out in their droves. So if they're moving him slowly, and he's picking up a couple of titles here and there, you know, like an English title, or would it be Southern area, or what kind of area title would he get? But if he's picking up little things here and there, the fans will come out. If Eddie Hearn is doing a next gen show, and this is the thing, Eddie Hearn's been talking about, we've heard the word next gen thrown around. If he's doing a next gen show, somewhere like York Hall or the actual Brentwood Centre would be perfect, because Johnny Fisher, I believe, is an Essex boy. The Brentwood Centre is in Essex. He would probably have that place rocking. You know, he would have that place full to the rafters. The Brentwood Centre is not massive, but Johnny Fisher's already shown himself to be, you know, a big attraction in that part. You know, he was able to get Eddie Hearn cheered, you know, as they said after the fight. So we'll watch Johnny Fisher closely. I haven't really covered any of his fights because he's still a work in progress, and maybe I'll do his next fight or the fight after. But for now, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing from him. He's still a bit crude, definitely powerful, but brings a fan base, and in many ways, you know, you could say he saved this show. It was noticeable that it did kind of dwindle a bit. You know, it certainly looked to me like there was less fans after he'd fought, because he fought 2 fights before the main event. There was Babbage after him, which we'll talk about now in a sec. But also on that card, we had Craig Richards in a fight against a Polish fighter. That was a very tricky fight for Craig Richards. He came out in the first round looking good, and he kind of marked up the Polish guy's face with his jab. You could see he was noticeably reddened, but he kind of, I don't know, he just kind of went to sleep almost after the first round in many ways, because I kind of thought after the first round this won't last too long. This would be a couple of rounds, and then it'll be dominance from Craig Richards, and it got very competitive. You know, Craig Richards really struggled to tear parts in this fight. You know, it was a close fight before the stoppage. In the 6th round, Richards really did put it on the opponent, landed a lovely uppercut. I mean, I saw that uppercut, and I just, you know, when you see an uppercut in the guy's head snaps, you instantly know his legs are going to be in trouble after that, because that's the kind of, you know, whiplash effect. And he hurt his opponent bad. He was very sloppy, though, in finishing him. Extremely sloppy. He was smothering his work. He was falling in. For me, Richards kind of just, when he got him hurt, it seemed as though he just almost, panic maybe it would be the word, or was just anxious to get him out of there. Now, in the end, he did get him out of there. The referee jumped in and stopped the fight. I have to say, the stoppage was atrocious, personally. Yes, the opponent was taking some shots. Yes, he'd been buzzed. But he was very competitive in this fight. He wasn't taking a beating at any point in the fight. You know, it was the first real crisis. He hadn't touched down, hadn't taken a knee, and you stopped the fight for that. For me, that stoppage was a bad stoppage. You got it. If he went down from some of the shots and he looked a bit dazed, and he waved it off then and there, I could understand that. But you got to give the guy a chance. I mean, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like he took a sustained beating over the course of 6 rounds. He was getting his head snapped back. He wasn't in this fight. It wasn't like that. It was very competitive. Some people had him ahead, some people have Richards ahead. But nevertheless, first real crisis of the fight. You stop the fight? No. It's happening too much in the UK. You know, it does happen a lot in the UK. In terms of the main event, Chantel Cameron, Mary McGee, fight I kind of expected. It was a lot better than I expected. I thought Chantel Cameron would win the fight comfortably, and in many ways she did, but it was a lot better than I had anticipated. I thought Chantel Cameron would just outbox Mary McGee the whole fight. Mary McGee showed very tremendous heart. I mean, following on from Eric Molina, which I'll get to now in a sec, she showed tremendous heart. I mean, such a contrast of 2 fighters. You know, Mary McGee in the main event, you couldn't question that girl's heart. Eric Molina, I'll stick with that analogy I used in my post fight. He's got a heart as big as Bojo's, you know what, literally. So I'll touch on Melina versus Babic one last time. Melina, I believe, retired after the fight, and you know, Melina, I just don't understand why they even kept recycling him. I mean, it's the same thing with him over and over and over again. It's like, because you fought a guy who's, you know, challenged for a world title, he challenged Anthony Joshua for a world title on pay-per-view, Anthony Joshua got rid of him, he's still relevant. He wasn't really relevant. I mean, many people were complaining about Eric Molina back then when he was brought in to fight Anthony Joshua back in 2016, you know, and Deontay Wilder in 2015. Molina's always been a guy who's had questionable heart, and the longer he's gone in his career, when the tough gets tough, he just finds a place to lie down. That's all he does. He just finds a place to lie down. And I think Eric Molina's retiring because I think he knows, do you know what, I'm not going to get any. I've made an absolute show in the last couple of fights when I've come over here. He's not going to pay me. He's not going to get me over here. The whole point is to make the prospect look good. And that fight, Alan Babic, he looked good in the first round, but the way the knockdowns happened in the second round was just, you know, Andy Lee, after I think the first knockdown, the second round, was like, no, it can't. And he was right. Well, he was right to complain, because it's like, it's so obvious what he's doing. He's looking for just to lie down, count me out, I'm done. That's all it was. So that was Molina. In terms of some of the fights on the undercard, you know, you had Ellie Scottney, who made her first fight with Shane McGuigan. It was a good little performance from Ellie Scottney. Ellie Scottney, she's only in her third fight, but you already see a lot of potential there with her. She definitely done a better job on Gangaloff than Ebony Bridges did. Sorry, much better job. It was night and day. And that win's aged a lot better. You know, since then, it really shows well. This girl really put that girl in her place. You know, Ebony Bridges struggled with her. She's gone on to win some titles in France. So Ellie Scottney will watch this space. She was in there with someone who was definitely durable and definitely had a bit of ambition. I think she was Spanish. Was she that fighter? So we'll see how she goes. We'll see how her career goes. Definitely with the division she's in. She's in bantamweight, I believe, now at the minute. You know, you still have Shannon Courtney. You know, God knows what she's doing these days. Whether Eddie Hearn even is going to keep working with her or not, I don't know. But that might be an interesting fight in a few months' time. At this stage right now, I'd pick Ellie Scottney to beat Shannon Courtney. I would pick. There's most girls in that division you'd pick over Shannon Courtney, to be honest with you. Her against Ebony Bridges, I probably would pick Ellie Scottney over Ebony Bridges, but Ebony Bridges, I think, is going down the road of a world title, so that fight could be a way off. Yeah, that fight could be a bit of a way off for now. That was the card. It wasn't really. It wasn't a good card. It really wasn't a good card. I mean, I gotta give credit to Eddie Hearn for having a go, because it would have been real easy to pull it and have the fighters, you know, because all the fighters on that card would have spent money in camp anyway and would have had to get it pushed back. So I give him credit for that, for letting it go ahead, but this was really poor, you know, in terms of everything. I have to just say I thought it was a very poor card, very weak card, and must do better. You know, I think that's the kind of thing we've been saying about the Dazn for a while. I'm still giving them hope. I'm still saying it's growing pains, but as it stands now, must do better. Some of the cards he announced on there was Conor Benn and Katie Taylor on December 11th. Now, I was listening to Ade's video, and I have to disagree with something he said. And you know, me and Ade, we got good respect for one another, but there was something he said that I have to disagree with. He said that Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn tend to get a bit of criticism because they're playing it safe. Now, I disagree with that. I'll tell you why. Because I think the criticism stems from Eddie Hearn trying to sell these washed opponents as viable contenders. Because when he was interviewed, and it was after, I think, the Babic fight, or maybe after the Fisher fight, he said Conor Benn would be fighting between a top 10 to top 15 opponent. Victor Ortiz, Robert Guerrero, Chris Algieri. As Frank Warren would say, do me a favour. No, they are not even close. So that's, I think, where a lot of people get annoyed about, is when he's trying to say Robert Guerrero, Chris Algieri, Victor Ortiz are top 15. They're anything but. They might have been top 15 a couple of years ago, and I think Chris Algieri recently has been fighting back down 140 pounds. They might have been a couple of years ago, many years ago in some cases, but not now. I mean, if you're talking about top 15, you'd be talking about guys like, Mean Machine, Kabalaskas, David Avanesian. What's wrong with David Avanesian? I'd like to see that fight. Eddie Hearn kind of alluded to this before Ben Focarados, and it was before the summer as well, that basically the road they're going with Ben is take fights that are good on paper in terms of the opponent, like your Adrian Granados, like your Conor Benn, like your Samuel Vargas. On paper, they've seen much better days. They're low risk. That's the way they're going to build it. When I look at the top 10 and top 15 of welterweight, the real top 10 and top 15 of welterweight, it's a struggle for Conor Benn. It's going to be a massive struggle. I mean, like, you look at Kabalaskas, Mean Machine, and he's a massive welterweight. Massive. And Conor Benn, when I look at him and I just see him, and I know he's not going to fight Boots Ennis, but you see the size of these guys. And Conor Benn was never a big welterweight. I mean, I remember early on in his career, very early on, they were saying, you're fighting at 140 pounds, aren't you? Yep. And then he changed it to, well, actually, I don't really want to cut. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, I want to lift some more weights. I don't really want to cut the weights. I'll stick at welterweight. He's really 140 pounder. He'd be a lot more effective at 140. Oh, that's a tough division too. But I think he'd be a lot more effective at that weight. At 147, he's... Look, I get what Eddie's doing, but I think that's more so where the criticism comes from. I don't think it's the fact that... Well, it's partially the fact that he's not fighting the best of opposition. He's fighting faded contenders. But I think it's the fact that Eddie Hearn is trying to sell these washed contenders as viable opponents. So for Eddie Hearn to come out and be like, oh, well, he's fighting the top 15 opponent. He's fighting Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero hasn't been a top 15 welterweight 5-6 years. And you're saying this is more viable than David Avanesian? No. He's not. He's absolutely not. And I bet you if David Avanesian vacated that European title tomorrow and the next opponent was, maybe a not so good welterweight, because some of the European welterweights, it's hard to tell. I'm sure they'd jump at that. If it was someone they thought, they'll beat him. But not David. I mean, they've said that, they wouldn't mind him vacating. That's what kind of irritates people about the way Conor Benn's being matched. And look, for me, do I have a major issue with him fighting a Robert Guerrero, a Chris Algieri? Not from a matchmaker point of view in sense of bringing them further along. No, as I said, the issue I have is when you're trying to tell me that these are viable opponents when they're clearly not. You're trying to sell me that this is, former world champion Robert Guerrero. No, man. Like, the people who know that Robert Guerrero's been finished for years. I mean, I think his last real stand was when he fought Danny Garcia at the start of 2016. That was really the last time he had a viable, and he lost that fight, but he was somewhat competitive in that fight. That's really the last of it. So he announced that card. I want to actually speak at Dazn because I seen this tweet today, and it's quite interesting. I bring it up here on screen. There's I think he's a boxing writer called Joe Hewlett is how you pronounce it, maybe. I'm going to read this tweet here. This is interesting. I've only seen this today. Big news coming in. Been told Dazn have reached a deal to buy out BT Sport from next summer. Will gain Premier League and Champions League rights. Now that is a game changer for Dazn anyway. Premier League football, Champions League football, that's where it's at. Subscriptions will, because that is literally where it's at. Like, everyone I know, football. There's also Dazn's. This actually surprised me. I'm scratching my head, kind of thinking what it might be. It says also Dazn's USA first pay-per-view will be in December. So that's kind of a given. The pay-per-view is dead. Well, it's clearly not. I'm just trying to think who that might be. Dazn's first pay. It wouldn't be Devin Haney versus Jojo Diaz, would it? Would it? No, they couldn't put that on pay-per-view. I'm just trying to think. There's no real fights announced. It wouldn't be Triple G versus Murata, would it? That's an interesting one if that's true. The most interesting part of this I read here is Golden Boy's deal will not be renewed after this year. Now, this is all being reported. I don't know how true this is, if someone wants to back this up, but this is what it's saying, and he's quoting this from planetsports.com, so it's quite interesting. So the Zone and Golden Boy looks like that could be Gonzo. Now, it has to be said, Golden Boy have been putting on a lot less shows as of late. It has to be said. And the shows they were putting on, they weren't incredible. Oscar De La Hoya has been a bit all over the shop this last year, it has to be said. I think I even saw a report that he was going to be attending the Canelo plant fight. You know, he's like, what, an ex-boyfriend who just won't let his ex-girlfriend go, and he's like, no, I have to see you and try. That's kind of like what it's like with Oscar, because after Canelo left, he's got Ryan Garcia, who's, whenever is he going to fight, and he's Virgil Ortiz. That's it, really, unless Beck the Bully lost, Jaime Munguia, to be fair, but that's really it. When I think about it, there's not much else there. Now, obviously, I think something people are going to be asking about, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, December 18th, Tampa, Florida. I'm going to watch that fight. I'm going to stay up and watch that fight. I don't mind it. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I really do. I think that's a fun fight. And I'm kind of in two minds. Part of me really does think Jake Paul, because Jake Paul is not an amazing fighter. He's got a bit of ability there. He's got a bit of athleticism. He doesn't have that much of a boxing background. Tommy Fury doesn't either. You know, he didn't have a massive amateur background. He's looked fairly rubbish as a pro, it has to be said. I think they're evenly matched, to be honest with you. They are quite evenly matched. Fight's going to be at 192 pounds. So that would probably favour... Who would that favour? Would it probably favour... But I probably wouldn't really have much of a favour, to be fair. But I think it's a fun fight. I'm not complaining. I will watch it. The more I've seen of Jake Paul, the more I've started to kind of just enjoy kind of the character and the events. I don't mind them now. I think when it started first, I kind of was like, are they taking the you-know-what? But then it kind of grew on me. And then I was thinking, hey, I was like, they are bringing eyes to boxing. And isn't that the most important thing? That the sport of boxing is able to grow. We're able to get new fans in. Even if they're coming in from this, we're getting fans into the sport. Because at the end of the day, like us hardcore fans, it's great, you know, to have the hardcores, because, you know, we know a lot, we're always tuning in. But who pays the fighters? You know, put it like this, right? That card last night, Johnny Fisher, 1,400 fans he brought there. How many of them you think were hardcore? Very few. But they helped to keep that event going. It's the casual to keep this event going, or keep the events going. And Jake Paul and Tommy Fury will bring that. That'll do. Eddie Hearn was saying he reckons it will do bigger numbers in the UK. I think if you've Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury is going to be in the corner of Tommy Fury. I think if you've Tyson Fury there, it's going to help sell that in the US as well. I can't wait to see. I think it's going to be fun. The build up will be fun. If they do a press conference in the UK, oh my God! Imagine Jake Paul trying to troll Big John Fury. Could you imagine? That would be hilarious. That would literally be hilarious if Jake Paul tried to troll John Fury. And John Fury is someone who doesn't play. You know, I mean, I remember Deontay Wilder back at that weigh-in in Belfast a couple of years ago, where Deontay Wilder had a smile on his face when John Fury... He thought John Fury was messing, was play acting, when he was saying, you know, I'll fight you. And I think the kind of penny dropped when he saw the look on his face. It was like, oh, he's not messing. Here's a bit of news, which I need to kind of be a bit careful about this. It's about the Rolly Ramirez situation. So, for those who don't know, and I thought this was someone trolling originally when someone told me about this, it looks like him versus Tank Davis is gone. And it looks like he's going to be fighting a guy. I seen his name here, but I can't seem to find it. Oh yeah, Isaac Cruz. He is reportedly the front runner to step in to face Gervonta Tank Davis. Basically, there's some sexual allegations against Rolly Ramirez, and police reports have now been filed. It looks quite serious from the outside looking in, and it looks like Rowley is really in he's really in hot water. Is what it looks like here, and it's been multiple people who've come out. Like I don't want to go too much into it. You know how YouTube can be, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, it's not looking good for Rolly Ramirez, and that was a fight I was kind of looking forward to it. I was, even though I kind of thought Tank Davis would knock Rolly Ramirez's head into orbit because he's very friendly to Tank Davis, but look like we're going to get that fight now, and I think Rolly has bigger issues to worry about now, to be honest with you. So we'll leave it there. We won't delve in too much into that. Naoya Inoue will face Aran Deepani, really butchering that name, on December 14th in Japan. I never heard of, I like Naoya Inoue, but I barely heard. I think I've heard his name once. I think his name does ring a bell. I think I might have heard of him once, but I'd like to see some unifications. I'd like to see him against I can't think of his name now. Casimero. Him against Casimero would be fun. But it'd be interesting to see how much longer he sticks around at 118. Because he's been talking about going up to 122 at featherweight. So I do like watching Naoya Inoue fight though, so I'll always watch him fight. David Benavidez will now face Kyron Davis on November 13th. Why will he face Kyron Davis? Well, Jose's Cats guy has reportedly tested positive for a banned substance. They named the substance. What was it called? No, they don't have it here. But yeah, tested positive for a banned substance. So he's off that card now. So I remember he went through a real good reign of form in 2017, and he looked quite dangerous back then. And one would wonder, was he on it then, or has this just only been a recent kind of thing? But there you go, another fighter gets popped, and not a fighter who you would really say is at world level anymore. So it just goes to show. Jesus. But yeah, Dave Benavidez is a fighter I really like, but his career has been really difficult, to watch as of late, between, fights not happening, missing weight. He's lost his WBC title at 168 twice, and neither of them have been in the ring. He tested positive for an illegal substance, a recreational substance at that, the first time. That was a couple of years ago. Wins it back, and then misses weight badly. It's not a good look. I like Dave Benavidez. I like his style. I think he's a very good fighter. Lately, his career has been a bit difficult, to just to be a part of at this stage. Because there's a lot of potential with him, but it's just, yeah. In terms of going back to the Matchroom card that was on last night, Dillian Whyte was there in person, pretty much alluding to the fact that he knows he's going to be fighting Tyson Fury next. The WBC have their annual, conference, which is going to come up in the next week or two. They will be announcing mandatories for their titles and, their up and coming fights and stuff like that, etc. So you can imagine Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury is going to be announced, and Eddie Hearn even alluded to the fact they're going to try and do it at Old Trafford. I don't know what the situation is with Tyson Fury and his license with the British Boxing Board of Control. He's kind of said that he's not going to fight in the UK again. We'll wait and see. Maybe Old Trafford 70,000 odd might change his mind, because I'd like to see it. I might even try and get over to that fight if it happens at a decent time. If it's happening in March or April next year, who knows. But for Dillian Whyte, it does seem kind of apparent that that shoulder injury, if it was there, because they're saying he only needs a couple of weeks rest, it's good to go. If there was a shoulder injury, I don't think it was that bad. I think, as I said in one of my other videos, that you gotta learn from history. Look at what happened with Povetkin. You had a title shot February 2021. Get by Povetkin, you get that shot. He got knocked out by Povetkin. I'm sure he's thinking, do you know what? Do I need this again? Yeah, he's not the punter Povetkin is, Otto Valiant, but he's an awkward southpaw. Do I need that? Do I really need that? And if I lose, I'm going to have to go through this whole rigmarole again, and that's going to get pushed back. And with the heavyweight division being as it is, God knows what's going to happen. Plus, Alexander Usyk versus Joshua could happen before my rematch with Otto Valiant happens. And if Usyk wins, Fury you know what I mean? It could just drag it out. So I'm sure Dillian Whyte thought, you know what, the hell with it. I'm just going to take this Fury fight now. It's going to get ordered. I'm going to get my shot. I don't think he's going to beat Tyson Fury personally. But I think it'll be competitive. I think it's going to be a very good fight, but I don't see him beating Tyson Fury. Just me, I could be proven wrong, but the build up to that fight is going to be great. You know, you're going to have Baby Ting and Shane Fury. You're going to have John Fury getting involved. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun build up. That's going to be actually a fun build up. I really do think it will be. So that's pretty much that. I think I've pretty much got the week covered. It's now midnight. So I think I've been talking for the best part of 30 minutes, 25 minutes. So I'm going to end it there. For now, lads and lassies, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm away as of today. Not away, but like I'm going down the country for a bit. So I'm bringing my recording equipment just in case. You never know when news breaks. So if you see me, be a different background. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.